Due to public demand, this is the English version of how police nailed gospel singer Sammy Boy into a robbery case that saw him sentenced to death by hanging. In place of that, he got life imprisonment. In the eyes of the law, Sammy Boy is a dangerous criminal who has no place in society. Chief Magistrate Kennedy Bidali had no doubts when he convicted him of robbery with violence and sentenced him to hang. Since he was handed his sentence in December 2021, he has been at the Naivasha Maximum Security Prison. Despite being convicted of the offense, Sammy Boy insists he was wrongfully charged as he was only found in possession of items he claims he did not even know where they were stolen. But detectives investigating the robbery put a strong case that placed Sammy Boy at the scene of the crime. The nation pieced together threads of evidence that investigators relied upon to win Sammy Boy's conviction and incarceration, including details of a double-faced man who turned out to be one of Central Kenya's most wanted gangsters. Court documents seen by Nation.Africa show that on the night of August 6, 2015, a gang of 6 held at gunpoint a family of British investors and their Kenyan staff in an attack at their home in Gilgil, Nakuru County. Sammy Boy was identified as one of the gangsters who took part in the 6-hour siege at Malewa Bush Ventures camp in Gilgil. The camp director, Christine Mary Campbell, and her husband, Christopher Edward Campbell, had returned from shopping around 8 p.m. on the fateful night. They had planned to prepare and have supper with their mother and 2 close associates identified as Sharon Lindy Pape and Keith Bentley. 3 of their Kenyan employees, including a nurse who was caring for their ailing mother, were also present. Testimonies given by the victims show that armed men broke into the home some minutes to 8 p.m. They were armed with a rifle, a pistol, and knives for the robbery, which detectives believed had been planned prior, complete with regular surveillance of the property to learn the movements of the occupants. They entered the compound's exterior kitchen first, where they accosted Mr. Benson Mwereria, a worker. He was tied up and ordered to remain quiet. Miss Christine, who was helping with the cooking, said that as soon as she entered the kitchen, she was also captured by the gangsters and tied up. They proceeded to rob them of their phones and jewelry. Her husband, Christopher, was next to be captured. 2 of the robbers were left to guard the 3, while the rest of the gang proceeded to the main house. In a few minutes, the gang had rounded up all 8 occupants of the house in the living room. They even mercilessly dragged out the couple's ailing mother from bed, but after pleading with them, they agreed to escort her back. In their testimonies, the victims also told the court that the robbers were not wearing masks at the time and kept on taunting them, and at some point even identified themselves as Al-Shabaab. For the next 4 hours, the gang ransacked the house, taking away anything they deemed valuable. They stashed their loot into 2 vehicles belonging to the Campbells. The gang took cash, both in local and foreign currency, assorted electronics, including phones, tablets, laptops, and other household appliances. A guitar was also reported stolen from the home. Around midnight, the victims were bundled into the boots of the 2 vehicles, both Toyota Prados. They then entered both vehicles and started driving towards Langa Langa. We drove for about 2.5 kilometers before stopping, Mr. Campbell said. The gang reportedly stayed at the spot for about 2 hours as they negotiated how they would split the loot while taking turns to watch their hostages. At some point, the gangsters are said to have disagreed on how much money they had stolen. They had to check with their victims how much money they had before the robbery. Around 2 a.m., the gang is said to have entered one vehicle and drove off, but not before deflating 2 tires of the other vehicle and throwing away the ignition key. One of the workers then walked to the nearest police station to get assistance. Detectives based at the Gilgil police station initiated a manhunt for the gang that drove towards Nairobi using phone data, and after questioning a suspect who had been arrested in connection with the heist, police managed to track down the stolen items to Kino on the outskirts of Nairobi 5 days later. On August 12, 2015, Sammy Boy was arrested after being found with stolen items. They were stashed in a minivan, which the nation has since learned had been hired 3 days before, on August 9th, by Sammy Boy. Even though the musician claimed the items belonged to a friend, detectives managed to uncover that he had hired the van from one Sammy Ngunjiri, who runs a rental car business in Kinoo. He even deposited copies of his identification documents with the car hire service, saying he needed to travel to Nyeri. Mr. Gunjiri had reportedly become suspicious when Sammy Boy failed to return the vehicle on August 11, 2015 as agreed. He soon learned that it had been impounded in connection to a robbery case and taken to Gilgil police station. Sammy Boy was eventually implicated and charged with robbery with violence alongside Simon Mwangi Nkuyai, Robert Mwirigi Mureithi alias Keva, Elias Kireithi Gishuki, Paul Thuita Washira, and Anthony Ndaiga Wandu. When Sammy Boy was interrogated by detectives, he stuck to his narrative that the items belonged to his friend. He took the same defense to court during trial, but after failing to prove his alibi, his defense was rejected. The said friend was never called to confirm. He never made any attempt through court to have the friend compelled to give his testimony. The burden was on him to show the items were not stolen. He failed to discharge that burden, Chief Magistrate Bidali said in his ruling. During his highly publicized interview, Sammy Boy revealed the identity of his friend and supposed alibi as one Onesmus Karanja. He claims his friend died in a road accident a few days ago. In an interesting turn of events, however, the name of the alibi has raised red flags among detectives in Nyeri. Apparently, Onesmus Karanja is in fact one of the many aliases of one of the musician's accomplices, Elias Kireithi Gishoki. Kireithi was profiled by police as one of Central Kenya's most wanted criminals between 2017 and 2019. He was gunned down by police in a shootout during a botched robbery at Blue Valley area in Nyeri town on October 10, 2019. Kireithi was at the time of his killing said to have been in the company of Paul Thuita Washira. The two were at the time on trial for the Gilgil robbery, but had skipped bond and absconded court appearances. Thuita is still at large, even though his alibi did not hold in the Gilgil robbery case. The four victims positively identified Sammy Boy and placed him at the crime scene, which convinced the court to send him to jail. Police conducted identification parades where victims managed to pick out their tormentors from a lineup of suspects. The prosecution used this as its strongest piece of evidence, securing convictions against 5 of the suspects. One of the suspects, Anthony Daiga Wandu, was acquitted for lack of sufficient evidence against him. Sammy Boy, Robert Mwirigi Mureithi, and Simon Mwangi Nkuyai were all handed the death sentence on December 2, 2021. The case against the accused has been proved to the required standards. I find them guilty as charged and are convicted accordingly, Chief Magistrate Bidali said in his ruling. Elias Kireithi, deceased, and Paul Thuita were also convicted and sentenced in absentia. Sammy Boy said he would appeal the death sentence. That is the horror story of Sammy Boy's death sentence. This is the Horror Stories YouTube channel. Please subscribe, comment, and share this story.